Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Chinmayam Yapi Yat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Narshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namah. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namah. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namah. Our salutations to Shukdev Maharaj and all the Gurus of the Bhagavatam. Satchidananda Rupaya Vishnautpatyata Hetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Namaha. Shri Krishnaya Vayam Namaha. It's Shri Krishnaya Vayam Namaha. Even though normally it's Namaha, in this mantra, the Sanskrit is Namaha. So, Krishna was preparing for the Ras Leela in all the different things that was happening around that time, starting with the stealing of the gopis' clothes, and then approaching the Brahmanas and their wives, and then Indra Devata. And there's another incident with the Devatas where Nanda Baba had gone to bathe in the river Yamuna, and an Asura had pulled him in and dragged him into, there's a loka that, sometimes when you hear these stories, there's even in the Western world, they talk about Atlantis, which is this whole world under the water. And Varun Loka sounds very similar to this, where there's a whole city and it's very flourishing and it's everything's very grand. And they're prosperous, and there's different people. And so Krishna realizes that Nanda Baba has been taken into this world, and so he jumps into the river Yamuna and he goes to get Nanda Baba back. And Nanda Baba is watching Varun Devata bowing down to Krishna and thinking, why are they bowing down to my little boy? Obviously Krishna is not just anyone. Firstly, how did he even come here? And then all this respect that they are giving him. So for a while, Nanda Baba starts getting disorientated, like how Yashoda Maya did when she saw all the universes in his head. And so Krishna brings Nanda Baba back up. And then all the Gopa Balas get very upset that you planned this. You took Nanda Baba to see a whole different world and you didn't take us. And this is partiality, and you're supposed to be our friend, and they're fighting with him, like full day they're fighting with him that, how could you go and not take us? Because of course when Nanda Baba comes back, he's describing this loka that he had been to and how these people were treating Krishna. And so now, of course, as young kids, you also want, and even as adults, we are no better than young kids. We want when we hear something. And so Krishna thought, well, we can't take them to Varun Devata's loka, so he takes them to Vaikuntha. All the Gopabalas that were complaining, he takes them to Vaikuntha. And in Vaikuntha, when he goes to Vaikuntha, of course he has to go sit on his throne. So all the Gopabalas are here, and Krishna is there, and so they like, can't we go sit with Krishna? And they're like, no. And then what are we going to do? You sit here and you sing. And they thought, this is very boring. We want to go back to Vrindavan. And so often they talk about how Vrindavan was far better than even Vaikuntha, because in Vrindavan they interacted with Bhagwan and they fed him and they spoke to him and they teased him, or rather he teased them. Can everyone come a little bit cozier? Whatever space we can fill up, please fill up. And yeah, please make space. And maybe go a little bit more this way, if you can. And so this is the journey. We want something, and then we turn our heart away from all the things that we want in the world, and then we want Bhagwan. Right? And so the gopis had done this puja for Bhagwan. And stealing away the clothes is to represent complete, absolute surrender, keeping nothing with themselves. Then invoking wise people, the Brahmanas. And then invoking the Devatas, Indra Devata and Varun Devata. And then they go to heaven. And so I've mentioned this already. This, for some people, that is the goal, to go to heaven. Or even sometimes bhaktas will say that I don't want all this moksha that Advaitins talked about. I want to stay a bhakta and continue drinking the rasa of bhakti. But we see even in the depictions of all these stories, the Gopabalas are like, no, Vaikuntha isn't as enjoyable as being with Krishna. And of course, in the bhakti sense of you, it's you would much rather be with Krishna. But here the aim is reading up to the Ras Leela, and it's the culmination of unity. And the Ras Leela can be seen in so many different ways and interpreted and spoken about in so many different ways. And so from the purely physical point of view, there is desire. And Krishna fulfills desire. So even he fulfilled other desires, then this is also desire, and he fulfills. Whatever we ask him for, remember, he will give us. And so be careful what we ask for. And then when we see that the gopis are these elevated souls who wouldn't ask for something so temporary. Yeah. And so the idea of being completely his so that there's no more them left is the surrender we see in the Ras Leela. Gurudev talks about it, gives the symbolism, as Krishna being consciousness himself. And every gopi being a thought. And our mind is just that, consciousness, and then every thought dances on that substratum of consciousness. And so the Ras Leela is our thoughts dancing in our mind. But the Ras Leela isn't our thoughts. Sorry, I should edit that. It's when the mind is thinking of only Krishna and no other thought. That there is only consciousness and the thought of Krishna. And then when the mind is so filled with just that purifying thought of Bhagwan, then thought itself will disappear and Bhagwan alone remains. And so from a meditation point of view, then the Ras Leela is seen very, very differently. And in the way that the symbolism works leading up to the story, that is what's being indicated here. That complete giving and unity, which becomes moksha. Even heaven is going to enjoy and coming back. Yeah, but this is no more me. Yeah. And soon after this, Krishna leaves also. He leaves Vrindavan. And so then that their journey, their spiritual journey, culminates here in the Ras Leela. In terms of, we go back to, if we see it just from a purely physical point of view also, then this physical desire of lust is the last one that gets conquered. Because one, it's biological and it's inbuilt. And on this spiritual journey, there's so many, as you have seen with each asura that we've met. There's so many subtle ways in our mind creating the sense of me. Okay? And so sometimes when we are focusing on cleaning and cleansing and evolving, then we're noticing all those other thoughts, and lust actually doesn't feature because the mind's so absorbed in sadhana and bhakti and seva. And that can happen, just to anyone, even if they're not doing sadhana, bhakti and seva. You get very involved in something, and then some other desires take a total, complete backseat. But it is in terms of, because it's inbuilt into the body, as we progressed even spiritually, it might not feature all the time, but it will definitely feature to test our resolve. Yeah. And so here in the Bhagavatam, it is said that when we hear the story of the Ras Leela with a pure mind, then we are freed from lust. And so Krishna goes to the forest at night, plays his flute. And this flute that makes our hearts dance, the gopis are drawn towards it. And they leave. This in Gopika Gita, it's emphasized even more, but Gopika Gita comes in the Bhagavatam, where while even just putting eyeliner, they hear the flute and they forget to put the rest of so only half is put. Or while dressing, and then they're not fully dressed yet, maybe one side got done and then they leave. Like the call is nothing else matters, only Krishna matters. And they all go to him. And this is why it can't be just a physical desire that's being fulfilled. Because some gopis, their house people look at them and say, "Where are you going this late at night?" And they stand in front of the door and say, "No, you're not going anywhere." And their yearning is so intense that they drop their bodies so that their souls can reach Krishna. And that's why we know this can't be only about overcoming a physical desire. Because their souls wanted to merge with him. The others go and he starts teasing them, and actually it's very Vedantic. The conversation they have about dharma and what is dharma is very deep and profound. But eventually he stops teasing them and testing them, and they actually dance. And whatever desire was there in each one of their hearts, Krishna becomes many and fulfills every single one. And in between, when they start thinking, how lucky am I? And the thought goes away from Krishna to them, he disappears. Because I-ness and minus causes all our sorrows. And so the minute I-ness came into their hearts, he disappears. They can't exist at the same time. I can't be me, limited entity, and infinite at the same time. Either I'm infinite or I am limited entity. And so when their thoughts drifted away to Krishna, to themselves, and he disappeared, that sorrow now is unbearable. It's like enjoying something and then it's taken away from you is worse than if you never had it at all. And this yearning is what purifies us. The intensity with which we yearn burns away pap. If you think of how many hundreds and thousands of lifetimes we've lived, and then how many karmas we would have collected from all those lifetimes. Like, there's just no amount of actions we can do to be able to get rid of all those karmas. Because even both the positive ones are still waiting for us to be able to receive the consequences of. And the negative ones are also still waiting. But when we yearn with such intensity for Bhagavan, it's described as throwing a match into a barn of hay. It burns numerous. Not otherwise we have to act, finish that karma. Act, finish that karma. And that's going to take so long. Yeah. And so it's this yearning that they had which purifies them. And in the Bhagavatam it is written that they are then the wives of Krishna. In fact, in some folklore, not in the Bhagavatam, they say that many of the gopis then, after this Ras Leela, when they had left their physical bodies, then took birth again in all the different princesses that Krishna then later marries. Whether it be Jambavan's daughter or Satyabhama, or the 16,000 that he married. But that's not in the Bhagavatam properly. In the Bhagavatam, they don't need to be born again to be Krishna's wives. There and then, they are his. And they go back home, having fulfilled this. But the tradition stays not as Ras Leela, but every time spring comes around in Vrindavan after that, the gopis would sing and dance and remember the time that they spent with Krishna, and still danced with him even after he left, although he was there for now, maybe another year or two. And then a few more asuras come. There's one called Shankachuda, and he has a jewel in his forehead that gives him all his strength. Again, sounds familiar? But Avengers is just recent. And Bhagavatam was? So yeah, 500,000 years ago, longer. Not 100,000, 5,000. They really do take all the stories from our scriptures. He kidnaps the gopis. And then Krishna has to come and save them all. And why was this done? Because while they kidnapped, the gopis sing something called Yula Gita, which is just praise of Krishna. Like, just everything about how his fingers move when he plays the flute, or how he stands, and how beautiful he is. And it is a beautiful praise of Krishna that you see in the Bhagavatam, that when we want to do meditation on the Saguna Roop, then all these descriptions given in this Eula Gita is very, very conducive for us to be able to focus our mind on it. And then there's 3-4 more demons that get killed. And remember, these are all thoughts that becomes more subtle and more subtle. And so one of them is a bull, which is very similar to Dharma, but it's an asura and represents how Dharma becomes corrupted in our thinking. And so Krishna has to kill that. So even that tendency in us to be able to not understand exactly how to practice Dharma. And then finally, Narad Muni thinks, okay, it's time. So Narad Muni goes to Mathura, to Kamsa, and says, do you know that the baby of Nanda and Yashoda was actually Devaki and Vasudev's? And he's been living there the whole time, and he's the one that's been killing all the asuras you've been sending. And Kamsa's furious. He wants to go straight back into that jail and kill Devaki and Nanda Baba. And then Narad Muni says, that may not be the wisest course of action. Why don't you plan better? Because, obviously so far everything you've done has not been successful. And then Narad Muniji leaves, and so Kamsa comes up with this plan of inviting Krishna and all of the Gopabalas to come to Mathura for some wrestling match. And so they send Akrura, who is Krishna's uncle. And the whole time Akrura is going to Vrindavan to pick him up, he is so excited that he's going to be meeting Krishna. And then he suddenly gets this thought that, oh, but I'm taking him to Kamsa, and so that's a horrible thing. Maybe I shouldn't go, but then Kamsa will kill me. And so then he gets very conflicted about having to take Krishna back to and so he decides he's just going to tell Krishna everything of Kamsa's plans. And when he gets to Vrindavan, in the Bhagavatam it is said that Krishna and Balaram are sitting there and he goes straight towards them. But in other stories they say that when he gets to Bhagavatam, he has to find Krishna, but when he gets off the chariot, Krishna's footprints are unique. They have the Shankara Gada Chakra on his, the lines we have. His footprints have the pattern of Shankara Chakra Gada. So you'd be able to see Krishna's footprints everywhere. And so he got off the chariot and he saw the footprints with Shankara Chakra Gada on them, and he bows down. And then, of course, the next step, because Krishna's going to be walking, and then walking this way, and then walking that way, he's not, and then he thinks, every time standing up and bowing, he just lies on the ground and rolls. Because there's all these footprints of Krishna, and how to do pranams to all these footprints of Krishna. And then he does. He tells Krishna of Kamsa's whole plan, and Krishna and Balaram say, don't tell Nanda Baba, just say we're going for the wrestling match. But the gopis know. When they say we're going tomorrow to Mathura for the wrestling match, the gopis start crying. Like they haven't told. They go, they come back, they go, they come back all the time, but the gopis think, no. Yeah. And they already saying in their hearts, you can't leave us, Krishna. And he says, but I'll see you all again. And he says it. And so, of course, it has to come true. But he never comes back to Vrindavan. And even Mother Yashoda, when she's saying bye to him, and Mother knows, like somehow she'll just get a sense. And she hugs him, and then he's about to go, and he catches her and hugs him again, and then he's about to go. And then Maya, which just doesn't want to let him go. They know that he's not coming back, whether consciously, subconsciously, they know. And he gets onto this chariot with Akura, and they are right. He never comes back to Vrindavan. And so when he said, we'll see you again, he does see them again. Much later, when Dwarka is already established, there's this huge yagna being done by Yudhishthira. And they all go. Everyone goes. In that vicinity, absolutely. So the people from Vrindavan go, and everyone from Dwarka goes, and everyone from Hastinapur goes, and everyone from everything of all these Puranas, everyone's there. And so they meeting Krishna after years. So he does see them again. So he didn't just say it and it didn't come true. And he sees them again just that once. And of course it's not quite the same, but he does spend 2 months with them when he sees them again. And at that time, when they meet they meet at Kurukshetra. Because Kurukshetra was where everyone met. And it was where yagnas used to happen. And of course it was a very happy occasion at that time when they met at Kurukshetra. And Draupadi asked Krishna's wives, how did you meet and how did the wedding take place? And then each one is telling the story of how each one met Krishna and how their weddings and how Krishna has been with them. And at that time, the gopis are sitting and listening to all those stories and come to see that as much as they love Krishna, his wives love him. And you can't really compare who loves who more. But definitely each wife also adored and revered Bhagavan Shri Krishna. So they get to Mathura, and it's all very eventful in Mathura. It's all very festive with this competition of all the wrestlers going on. And Kamsa has planned this elephant Kuvalyapida to stomp on Krishna when he comes, and he's planned these wrestlers, Chanura and Mustik, and so many other things he's planned. But Krishna and Balram gather with Nanda Baba, and they set up camp outside of Gokul before going into Gokul, and then they go in to see the city, and they're walking around. And this bit I already told you, the first person they meet is Kamsa's Dobi. And Krishna says, give me the clothes. Whichever ones will fit, give me the clothes. And the Dobi is very, very, very arrogant. So Krishna punches him and takes the clothes. And he's wearing these beautiful clothes. And then there's a different Sudama. Not the story that people know, the Sudama that we'll be seeing that story as well, where he says, please come into my house. And Krishna goes into his house. And I think the one that intrigues a lot of people is a lady called Kubja, who is hunched back. And Krishna calls her a beauty. And so she stops and she looks at him. And then he presses his foot on her foot and puts his hand on her chin and pulls her. And no chiropractor has ever been able to do this. Because she is now completely straight. And so here in the commentary, great Mahatmas say that when he said, oh beauty, it was preempting that all ugliness will be taken away and she will be made beautiful. I mean, her face was already beautiful. He just made her straight so that people could be able to see the face, because otherwise the face was hidden by her hunchback. And so now all of Mathura is talking about this little boy because, when you do a miracle, it definitely gets attention. And punching the Dhobi got little bit attention. But straightening Kubja got so much attention and already won people's hearts in Mathura for Krishna. And then finally, from Kubja, she was also taking all sandalwood and perfume and all of that to Kamsa, and Krishna takes it for himself. And so everything that was Kamsa's, Krishna is already taking for himself. The clothes, the sandalwood, and in a way, he is sending messages. Because of course, Kamsa hears, because he doesn't get his clothes. And then he hears, because he doesn't get his sandalwood. And remember, Kamsa has been thinking continuously of Krishna out of fear. Like continuously. And now, with the intention of destroying Krishna, he brought Krishna so close, and then everything that happens just makes him more scared and more scared and more scared. And so that thought of Krishna is becoming more and more and more and more intense, so that he can be truly, truly, completely purified, because when killed by Krishna, he's going to go to Vaikuntha. And so needs to be purified, so he needs to think of Krishna with more intensity. And then the next day it's the event, and the elephant gets killed, and Moshe gets killed, and Chanur gets killed, and Kamsa is sitting on the balcony, and I'm sure you all have seen all the cartoon animations of this, and Krishna jumps up and then takes Kamsa and throws him down, and actually Kamsa has a heart attack. Krishna doesn't even get to kill him. He is so scared that when Krishna jumps up on the balcony, he is so scared that his heart already starts beating so fast that he has a heart attack. So a little bit of an anticlimax. But Krishna then goes immediately to free Vasudeva and Devaki from the jail and says, a son's duty is to ensure their parents live in heaven. And I've left you here in this jail. And so he apologizes and vows to amend that. And from that day onwards, they stay with Krishna. Vasudeva and Devaki stay with, even in Dwarka. And there is, even when the description of Dwarka is given, Krishna goes and does pranams to them every single morning. And from this day, from when he frees them. And the reunion is very, very sweet. It's not so detailed in the Bhagavatam. In Kathakar style, I have heard different versions of Devaki wanting to see how he was when he was even younger and played all the mischief, and he shows it to her all in a span of a few minutes, because Bhagwan can shrink time and expand time. And but then he goes on and he frees Ugrasena, which is his grandfather, and reinstates Ugrasena as the king, and the kingdom of Mathura once again starts to flourish. Even though batteries are here. Even though Kamsa had a lot of wealth for Mathura, the minute Krishna comes to Mathura, it flourishes even more, because where Krishna is, Lakshmi will also come. And so then the descriptions of how the city becomes more beautiful now that he has made Ugrasen the king and he is living there. But they don't live there for very long, because once Ugrasen is established as the king, there's two occasions. One is when the wrestling match is going on, and now when Ugrasen is coronated as the king, then there's this huge prabha, means there's this huge gathering. And what is interesting in the Bhagavatam here is it shows how each one is seeing Krishna. So those who have bhakti in their heart see Krishna as this lovable, attractive young boy. And those who were on Kamsa's side, they see Krishna as fierce. And if you see some of these, maybe not Krishna as much as fierce, but you see these drawings of Hanumanji. What is AI thinking? They make him look so fierce sometimes. And then you see some drawings of Hanumanji and he looks absolutely like a grandpa. Right. And maybe it's because of what it's being said here, that each one saw Krishna so differently. And the learned Brahmins, when they looked at Krishna, they saw a learned Brahmin. And like the gopi kind of girl saw young cute boy. And the mothers saw that, and it invoked in them. And then many saw fierce. And Krishna could become fierce. But we won't tell AI that. Even when Ugrasen was being made a king, and then in a way it was easy to be able to see who had to be removed from the kingdom just by the way that they saw Krishna. And then because Devaki and Devaki and Vasudev Maharaj hadn't been able to do much in Krishna's childhood, they do the Yagna Pravit for him as a big celebration that now he is there with them in Mathura. And then Vasudev says, but you have to go to school. You've just been, having fun this whole time. Kids have to go to school. And so they send him off to Rishi Sandipani to study. And Puja Gurudev named our ashram Sandipani, because he used to say he wants hundreds of Krishnas teaching the Gita. And so Sandipani Sadhanalaya was created, and he chose that name specifically from the Bhagavatam. So Krishna goes to Rishi Sandipani, and he stays only 1 year. How long do we go to school? Huh? 12 years, then uni, then masters, and pre-KG and pre-KG, and yeah. Easily 25 years. Krishna finished all his education in 1 year. He fast-tracked it. And at the end of his time with Rishi Sandipani, he goes to him and says, what can I offer you as Guru Dakshana? So always Guru Dakshana is given. Whenever we take, we give. And usually if they didn't have many resources, then they just offered what they had. Yeah. So if they had an apple farm, they offered apples. But if they had resources, then they would always ask Guru, what is it that I can give you that you need as my dakshana? And Rishi Sandipani, looking at Krishna, said, you are the best thing I could ever ask for. You coming and living here for 1 year has been such an amazing blessing. How can I ask for anything after having you? Like there's nothing that can supersede having you. And then Krishna said, but something else. And he said, really, I can't think of anything. And so Krishna turns to Guru Ma, his wife. And Guru Ma is already tearing. And she says, having you here this last year has filled my heart so much and has reminded me of my own son. And so, if you could, we don't know where he went. Can you bring him back? So the first thing Krishna does is go to Yamraj. But he's not there. Yamraj hadn't taken him. So then where is he? And there was an asura that lived inside the conch. It must have been a really big conch because he kept the boy inside the conch also. As a, not prisoner, as a slave. And so Krishna is expert at killing asuras. Frees the son and returns him to Guru and Guru Ma as his dakshana. And her sentiment is that I'll miss you less if I have somebody to look after. But the conch that he emptied from this demon, he keeps. And this is Panchajanya. It's the conch that he blows. And the story is significant because even Krishna, we know, holds a flute. And there's this one story, not in the Bhagavatam, made up masala version story, of Rukmini goes looking for Krishna and finds him sitting near the shores in Dwarka, watching the waves, playing his flute. And all the creatures, the fish, the birds, everyone has come and gathered around listening to Krishna. All the people nearby who heard the flute also sat around just listening to him play the flute. And so she thinks, okay, he's busy. She goes back, this is Rukmini, to the palace. And then she's waiting for him to come home. And when he does come home, she notices the flute is tucked into his pants. And she thinks, the flute was with him there. Now, even at home, the flute is with him. I only get to be with him when he's at home. I don't get to be with him when he is not here. So this flute is luckier than me. And so when Krishna goes in to freshen up, she uses her siddhis, her shaktis, her tapasyacharya, and she breathes life into the flute. And she says, why are you so special? And the flute says, I don't know. How come you get to be with Krishna the whole day? Nobody else gets to be with Krishna the whole day. Yeah. Again, the flute said, I don't know. I just know that I am this empty reed that he plucks, and I have nothing in me. But when he breathes his breath into me, it becomes beautiful music. Maybe you too can empty yourself. Then he'll keep you close to him. And so she packs the flute away and keeps that thought in her heart. And she realizes even that thought of being jealous of the flute was keeping her away from Krishna. Because even if he wasn't physically with her the whole day, she could have been with him in her thoughts the whole day. So this conch, Panchajanya, he now that he has emptied it. He keeps it with him and uses it as his instrument. And when we hear the blow of the conch, it's to remind us it's time for puja. Because it sounds every time before we do the arti. In Rishi Sandipani's ashram, he makes a friend. Yeah. All of y'all already know. The background of Sudama is different versions. Background of Sudama is not given in the Bhagavatam, and so the different versions may be from different Puranas. There's one saying that he had done such meritorious deeds, and that's why he got to be Krishna's friends. There's one that I heard, where while they were in the Sandipani ashram, they had to go out on rotation to pick up the sticks. Every day they do havan in the ashram, and so the shishyas have to go out as part of their chores to pick up all the wood that would get offered into the havan. And so they set off and they're picking up the twigs, and then it starts raining. And so when it starts raining, they run to the trees for shelter, but the trees are not going to be able to give them that much shelter. So Krishna goes to one tree and Sudama goes to another tree, and they're close enough to each other, and then they decide it's raining really a lot. So they climb and they sit on the branch of the tree where the leaves are a bit more dense, and so they're a little bit protected from the rain. And so from one tree, Krishna is screaming to the other one, Sudama! Sudama can hear over the rain, because rain can be quite loud sometimes. Yeah? You okay? I'm okay. And then Krishna says, I'm hungry, because Krishna's always hungry. And Sudama thinks, oh yeah, I packed us a snack. And then Krishna says, okay, but you start eating. I'll eat it later. And then sitting there watching the rain, waiting, Sudama, of course the snack was puffed rice, if you didn't already understand what the snack was going to be. And so he's eating and he's eating and he's eating. It's like when we watch TV and we're eating and then, it's finished. He yells at Krishna, you okay? I'm okay. But I think the rain stopped. Let's make a run for it back to the ashram. And both of them ran back to the ashram. But Sudama ate up all the puff rice and Krishna never got it. But he never even asked. Then as you all know, the story goes, Sudama married and was very, 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 very poor. Like not eating for days together, poor. But the whole time, he would think and talk about my friend who I met in the Gurukul, whose name is Krishna, and now he's the king, and he lives in Mathura. By then would have been Dwarka. And he was so, kind, and he was so funny, and we did this together, and we did that together. So the wife knew every story. She had heard it already 100 times, each version of all the stories that Sudama had of Krishna. And the children, when they were born, didn't have food to eat, but they heard the stories of when the father spent time with Krishna. And so they've definitely heard, and he'd always have this lost, longing look on his face every time he spoke about Krishna. And so one day his wife says, why don't you go ask him to give you something? You say he's the king. And Sudama says, I'm not going to ask him for money. And then she thinks now what to do. How else are we going to survive with all this poverty? And so gets the kids to ask him, can you ask your friend? It's harder to say no to kids, especially when he knows that they've been hungry for days together. So he decides, okay, I'll go. And he tells his wife, I can't go empty-handed. And she opens the cupboards and there's nothing there. Nothing. She has to go to the neighbor's house to borrow whatever they would give so that he could take it. So she goes to 4 different houses and she comes back with 4 different types of puffed rice because every house makes it slightly different. And that becomes enough in one handful, and she wraps that up for Sudama to take with him. And the whole way when Sudama is walking, he's just so excited that he's going to be seeing Krishna and he's remembering Krishna, and then he gets to Dwarka and it's huge and it's beautiful. And Krishna has no guards and gates in front of his house. Anyone can go in. And so as he's walking down to enter Krishna's house, Krishna already sees him and comes running up to him. Sudama, it's been so long since I've seen you. And immediately hugs him and immediately says, you look way too thin, come inside, we have to feed you. But before that, because he's a Brahmana, washes his feet. In fact, lets him go and has a bath completely, gives him new clothes, offers sandalwood, and then this is not in Bhagavatam, but some other Katharkar says, then Krishna says all his wives have to come and worship him, because when Brahmana comes to visit, you offer your respects. And so, the first one comes, who is Rukmini, and gives him a piece of mithai and then puts sandalwood paper, and then he says, gives a full blessing like, Sogyavati Bhavati, or live long, and then 8 wives finish and more keep coming and more keep coming. And now he can't eat that full piece of mithai, so now he's taking and then 1,000 have finished, and now he can't even put the few crumbs of mithai in his mouth, he's just touching it to his. Because he had 16,000 wives. But this is not in Bhagavatam, this is all masala. But Krishna really does receive him with so much love and makes him sit on his chair and feeds him, and they're talking and they're enjoying and they're reminiscing about old times, and Sudama stays the night, and then the next morning when Sudama is about to leave, Krishna says, I'm sure Bhabhi sent something for me. She wouldn't have sent you here empty-handed. And Sudama, now seeing this beautiful palace and having eaten all this amazing food, and he was already embarrassed yesterday to give it, and he was so happy it didn't come up. And so already he has hidden it in some corner of somewhere, and Krishna is like, no, it must be so good, that's why you're not giving it to me. You're always eating all my snack, I know you, Sudama. And Balvihar version of the story, I'll say Krishna tickled him and found where it is and pulled out the puffed rice. And then opens it and puts one mouthful and says, this is delicious, it's my favorite. You remembered. And he was about to eat the next life, but Rukmini said, no, Krishna, let us have also. He is prasad. Why are you eating all by yourself? And stops eating from the next life, because it is explained in the Bhagavatam that if he had eaten more, Lakshmi Maya would have had to go herself with him. Because offered with so much love, not quantity. Offered with so much love. And so when received, has to be able to give. Everyone please move a little bit. There'll be space. Just little bit, everybody move. Chahat, move forward now. Oh, this stands there. And so, with a very heavy heart, Sudama is leaving. And as he's leaving, he's wondering when he'll see Krishna again. And Krishna he didn't ask. He didn't ask Krishna for the money. Seeing the palace and seeing Krishna and being there with Krishna brought him so much joy, he couldn't bring himself to ask. And then as he's walking back home, he even thinks, I'm sure my wife's going to be upset, but how? When he gives so much love, how to ask for something more and how to ask for anything else? And so there's two aspects here. Even though it's true that if we have love, there's no need to ask for anything else, Sudama did have that slight feeling of, I won't ask. It's different when no need to ask. That's different. To, I won't ask. Doesn't matter if I don't have. In fact, before he came, he would say to his wife, Krishna is all-knowing. So he already knows our poverty. So if this is how it is, then this is how it is. No need to ask. Because to ask takes humility. A bit of that was there, as per what is being described here, because Krishna wants to take it away, and that's why he had to go. But he didn't ask. And Krishna didn't say also. Do you need anything? Can I give you anything? Nothing. Krishna didn't say also. Because the one that asked wasn't Sudama. The one that asked was his wife. And the wife didn't have to go. Her heart, he already knew. Because Sudama's right. He knows. And so Krishna didn't give Sudama anything. But he gave the wife. And so Sudama is walking back. And it should be his house. And then suddenly he is thinking, did I take a wrong turn? And then he backtracks a little bit and it was the right turn. It's the right street. But he can't find his house. His house has just disappeared. And while he's looking for his house, a lady who is dressed in this beautiful sari with lovely jewelry comes running up to him. And he thinks, who are you? And then she looks at him and, your wife! And then he has to look closer because when he left, her sari was torn and, her hair wasn't done and there was no jewelry whatsoever. And then suddenly, like, she's dressed like she's come out of some fashion magazine and then he didn't recognize her. And then in that moment when he recognizes her and recognizes that she's dressed like that, and she says, come see! And she's pulling him towards this huge mansion. In that moment, he recognizes Krishna gave, even though he didn't ask. And that stubbornness of I won't ask was just silly. And so he removes it in this incredibly loving way. Sometimes he removes it in a bit of a tappar. But sometimes he removes it where we realize that our thinkings, it's in so many ways, our thinkings can become our own block to be able to see him and experience his grace in our lives. And so he comes back from Rishi Sandipani's ashram and he is now they helping Ugrasena rule Mathura. And as Mathura prospers, because there's so much wealth now in Mathura, it keeps getting attacked by different kings. So the first king that attacks them is Jarasandha. Am I saying it right? Jarasandha? You all already all know the stories. And so Jarasandha is a very, very powerful king. And he attacks Mathura 17 times. And Balram and Krishna, leading the army of Mathura, are able to protect Mathura each and every single time. And then the 18th time, they bring somebody with them called Kalyavan, who is also a king. And Kalyavan has this boon that whoever faces him in battle will run away. What an interesting boon to have. Never mind about I don't want to die. Just whoever ever has the thought in their head of wanting to fight with me, they will run away. It's actually quite a cool boon if you think about it, right? Like it guarantees you're just never going to fight. And so Krishna knows that there's this boon. So he tells Balram, you make sure you protect Mathura. I will go and fight with them. And so when he stands in front of Kalyavan, of course the boon takes effect, and Krishna runs away from the battlefield. And he does this and earns himself the name Ranchor. And poor Krishna gets very bad reputation. But it's quite an endearing name for people, because many people have, older generation, of course now it's all Riya, Siya, Mia. Older generation who used to use that name, it used to be quite a popular one. Many uncles I have. Called Run, not of the sense of running away, just all his glories. And this time they realized that Mathura is not going to stay safe because people are just going to keep attacking it. And so Krishna builds Dwarka. And everyone from Mathura is moved to Dwarka. And so now if they attack, it's fine. Mathura is an empty city. And so they do. The army comes and they attack and there's no one there. And eventually all these people get killed, and there's lots of stories about lots of battles about how it happens. Do we need a break? Y'all need a break? But you know you'll make too much noise. So you're only going to get a break if I get a promise from y'all. That y'all will only chant and no other talking. Y'all have to give this promise or you're not getting break. Yes? Yes. You will only chant. No talking. And it will be only 10 minutes. Yes? Yes. Okay. Y'all giving promise to Guru. Remember what happens if y'all break promise. Huh? 10 minutes.
Bhajamana Govinda Gopala